In this module, we are going to learn the categorization of money supply into the exogenous money supply and the endogenous money supply. There is a wide theoretical and empirical work done in the field of macroeconomics to assess the role of money supply in influencing the macroeconomic variables and whether the money supply is exogenous or endogenous. The standard neoclassical model takes it as exogenous and considers money to be neutral, which means that changes to the money supply and to interest rates have an effect only on the nominal variables but no effect on the real variables such as real GDP. In contrast, Keynesian theories argue that prices do not adjust systematically due to the price rigidity, so that a change in the money supply could have an effect on the real interest rates and therefore on the economic activity as long as a country does not fall into the liquidity trap. Keynesians claim that changes in money supply may influence the aggregate demand, thereby leading to full employment without generating inflation. However, during 1980s, Keynesian theories lost credibility to the monetarists such as Milton Friedman, who suggested that monetary policy can stabilize the economy and can influence the real variables in the short run.
After studying this module, you shall be able to know the alternate versions of quantity theory of money, understand the concept of money supply and its components, identify the difference between endogenous and exogenous money supply, evaluate the impact of monetary expansion on the equilibrium in money market, analyze the role of interest rate in determining the money market equilibrium. Let us begin with the basics of money supply. Total money in circulation in the form of currency and deposits constitutes the money supply. Money supply can either be exogenous or endogenous. In case of exogenous money supply, the monetary authorities has complete power over the supply of money while demand and market forces determine supply of endogenous money. The monetary equilibrium is established where the demand for money becomes equal to the supply of money. Let us move on to money and macroeconomic variables. There is a wide evidence of close linkages between money and other macroeconomic variables like inflation, interest rates, output, etc. The quantity theory is basically a theoretical explanation of the role of money in economic activities. The real credit of classical quantity theory goes to Irving Fisher, who propounded that one of the normal effects of a rise in the quantity of money is an exactly proportional increase in general price level. It implies that there is a direct positive correlation between the quantity of money in circulation and price level. Also, there exists an inverse relationship between quantity of money and value of money. Classical theory argues that real and monetary sectors are completely different from each other and are unrelated. This implies that money growth does not affect real output or the real rate of interest, and money growth is inflationary. Now, let us throw some light on classical theory. Classical theory asserts that MV is equals to PT, where M is the total money stock, V is the velocity of money, MV is equals to total money supply, P is the general price level, T is the total number of transactions. Thus, PT is equals to total demand for money for making transactions. There are two important assumptions in stating this equation. One, the velocity of money and T are constant. Two, there is full employment in the economy. Based on these two assumptions, the classical theorists assert that change in M is equals to change in P. Fisher also projected that the real interest rate is independent of monetary measures, which implies that nominal interest rate equals the real interest rate plus expected inflation. According to the principle of monetary neutrality, due to the classicals, an increase in the rate of money growth raises the rate of inflation but does not affect any real variable. Thus, in the classical theory, inflation is driven by money growth and nominal interest rate by inflation. Keynesian theory, however, stressed that there is a strong link between the real and monetary sectors of the economy. Keynes came with three motives of demand for money. Apart from focusing on the role of money as a medium of exchange in the form of transactionary and precautionary motives, Keynes added the function of money as a store of value in the form of speculative motive. This component of demand for money depends upon the interest rate prevailing in the market. So, demand for money is affected by interest rate apart from income. Keynes' aggregate demand function is given by MD is equals to K into PY plus L into I, where K is equals to income sensitivity of demand for money, PY is the real income, and L is the demand for money function, which depends on the rate of interest. Keynesian theory claimed that money supply can influence the real economy by changing the aggregate demand through the monetary transmission mechanism. As money supply affects interest rates, which in turn affect investment and ultimately the aggregate spending. This theory implies that prices do not rise immediately due to rigidities, and thus monetary policy cannot aim to bring in price stability in the economy. This Keynesian approach was challenged by monetarists who claimed that monetary policy can be used to stabilize the economy. Friedman, in his version of the theory of demand for money, regards money as an asset or wealth which earns rate of return. Keynesian's and Friedman's approach differs in terms of the stability of the demand for money function. While former consider it as unstable due to changes in interest rate, the latter school of thought considers it as stable. Thus, money and interest rate are linked through the money market. The effect of change in money supply on output is influenced by the change in interest rates. As far as the question as to whether money supply is exogenous or endogenous is concerned, the two schools of thought originating from Keynesian and monetarist sources have merged over time, resulting in a consensus that money is exogenous. On the other hand, post-Keynesians have come to support the idea that money is endogenous. Now, heterodox monetary theory, which is an alternative to neoclassical monetary theory, has a completely different approach to the nature of money. In this view, money supply is endogenous and is determined within the economic system by the economy-wide need for credit. This theory postulates that it is the interest rate that the central bank can effectively control rather than any of the monetary aggregates. Let us look at the components of money supply. Money supply refers to the stock of money held by the public at a point of time in an economy. It includes the total amount of money that is in circulation with private individuals and business firms. It excludes all those items which are not in circulation, like the amount of coins and currency which are held by the commercial banks as cash reserves, cash held in the treasury by the government, and stock of gold with the central bank. There are two main components of money supply. First, currency. This consists of coins and currency notes that are in circulation. The central bank has the sole right to issue and print currency notes in every country. Second, demand deposits. These are those checkable deposits which are deposited in banks by the depositors, and bank agrees to honor demands from the depositors at any time in the future. The different components of money supply are added up to arrive at different measures of money supply, that is M1, M2, M3 and M4. The narrow measure, that is M1, is the most liquid. It is measured at a point of time by adding currency with the public, net demand deposits, and other deposits held with the central bank. Thus, M1 is equals to C plus DD plus OD. Another narrow measure is M2, which includes saving of people with post offices. Thus, M2 is equals to M1 plus savings of people with post offices. Similarly, there are two broad measures of money supply, M3 and M4. M3 is the most commonly used measure of money supply, where M3 is equals to M1 plus net time deposits with commercial banks. M4 is still broader measure and includes savings with post offices along with M3. Thus, M4 is equals to M3 plus savings with post offices except NSC. Now, let us begin with the topic of exogenous money supply. Money demand, as we saw, is a function of interest rate and money income. Money demand is a decreasing function of rate of interest but a rising function of level of income. Money supply may or may not be a function of interest rate depending upon whether the money supply is exogenous or endogenous. An exogenous variable is a variable whose value is set or changed outside the model by the economist conducting the analysis. Money supply is said to be exogenous when monetary authority has complete control over it. It means that it is not affected by the change in interest rates. In the classical model, money is considered to be exogenously given at a fixed level. When the money supply is exogenously given, monetary authority determines the money supply and financial sector, firms and households have no significant role in influencing it. In this figure, the money supply curve is drawn as vertical, which means that it is unrelated to the rate of interest and no economic factors influence the level of money supply. In the ISLM framework, the derivation of LM curve also derived on the assumption of exogenous money supply. Now, let us look at the implications of exogenous money supply. First, broader measures of money must follow developments in high-powered money. Second, the money multiplier must be greater than 1 by definition. Third, central bank must be able to control the volume of high-powered money. It implies that an increase in high-powered money should increase lending and credit creation. Fourth, only the distribution, not the volume of debt, will matter, since lending is financed through savings and one's debt is someone else's asset. However, the empirical evidence points at somewhat different experiences than what is implied by the theoretical outcomes. Money multiplier has been below 1 In the aftermath of crisis period, broader measures of money do not follow the monetary base due to presence of lags. In spite of significant amounts of accumulated reserves following the excessive money printing, lending remained very limited. Central bank control led to disastrous consequences during 1980s, which prompted the central banks to implement inflation targeting through interest rate setting policy. Coming to monetary equilibrium with exogenous money supply, money market is said to be in equilibrium when the demand for money equals the supply of money. In the money market, money supply is exogenously given and the endogenous variable is the interest rate. Endogenous variable that will change to re-establish the equilibrium. Variables that do not change in the adjustment to the equilibrium are the exogenous variables. Changes in the exogenous variable is necessary to cause an adjustment to a new equilibrium. In figure, we are going to see how monetary equilibrium is established with exogenous money supply. Y-axis represent interest rate and x-axis represent money balances. Initial equilibrium is established where money demand curve MD intersects the money supply curve MS and interest rate is at R. Now suppose that for some reason the actual interest rate lies below the equilibrium interest rate R. At R1, real demand for money exceeds the real money supply. One of the implications is that people and businesses show a preference to hold more assets in liquid form rather than holding assets in a less liquid form, such as in a savings account. This excess demand for money will make households and businesses to exchange assets from less liquid accounts into checking accounts or cash in their pockets. This would involve person withdrawing money from their savings account to hold cash in their wallet. The savings account balance is not measured as a part of the M1 money supply. However, the currency that people have in their wallet is a part of money supply. This is result of rising demand for speculative money balances. As a result, the financial sector will experience a decrease in time deposit balances, which in turn will reduce their capacity to make loans. In other words, withdrawals from savings and other type of non-money accounts will diminish the total collection of funds accessible to be loaned by financial sector. With fewer funds to lend and same demand for loans, banks will take action by raising interest rates. Higher interest rates will decrease the demand for loans, helping to equalize supply and demand for loans. Finally, as interest rates increase, money demand decreases until it equalizes with the actual money supply. Through this mechanism, average interest rates will increase whenever money demand exceeds money supply. The exactly opposite adjustment will happen whenever for some reasons money supply exceeds the money demand. When interest rate rises from R to R2, then real money supply will exceed real money demand, meaning that the amount of assets or wealth in a liquid, spendable form is greater than the amount they would like to hold. The increase in loanable funds in the face of constant demand for loans will force banks to lower the interest rates to stimulate the demand for loans. However, as interest rates fall, the demand for money will rise until it equalizes again with money supply. Through this mechanism, average interest rates will fall whenever money supply exceeds money demand. Expansionary monetary policy aims at raising or expanding the money supply. This can be accomplished with open market purchases of government bonds. With a decrease in the reserve requirement or with an announced decrease in the discount rate, in almost all growing economies, the money supply is expanded regularly to keep up with the expansion of GDP. In figure, we are going to see the impact of monetary expansion under exogenous money supply. Y-axis represent interest rate and x-axis represent money balances. Suppose the money market is originally in equilibrium at the intersection of MD and MS at interest rate R. An increase in the money supply causes an increase in the real money supply is shown as a rightward shift from MS to MS1. At the original interest rate, money supply exceeds money demand and the actual interest rate is higher than the equilibrium rate. There will be adjustment to the lower interest rate as explained above. The final equilibrium will occur where the equilibrium interest rate has fallen from R to R1. Thus, expansionary monetary policy, that is, an increase in the money supply, will cause a decrease in average interest rates in an economy. In contrast, a monetary contraction will lead to a rise in interest rate in the economy. It must be noted that money supply we are considering is the real money supply, assuming price level to be constant. This is equal to the nominal money supply. All the analysis is on ceteris paribus assumption. Now, we will move to endogenous money supply. An endogenous variable is a variable whose value is determined inside the model by solving the model. The supply of money is said to be endogenous when the monetary authority has no control over it and the demand for money determines the supply of money. In the case of endogenous money supply, banking sector, individuals, and firms play an important role in influencing the supply of money. The supply of money is influenced by the money multiplier process. The monetary base changes whenever central bank issues new base money and this money is deposited in banks in the form of demand deposits. As the commercial banks work on the fractional reserve system, they keep a fixed proportion of these deposits as reserves and lends the balance deposits. This process will keep on repeating itself until the demand for loans and advances keep on coming. As bank deposits are a component of money, money demand is influenced by the behavior of banking sector, individuals and firms. The money multiplier is derived using two equations. M is equals to C plus D and H is equals to C plus R, where M is the money supply, C is currency, R reserves with banks, D demand deposits, and H stands for high powered money or monetary base. If we divide first equation of money multiplier by second, we get M by H is equals to C plus D by C plus R. Dividing numerator and denominator of both sides by D, we get M by H is equals to C by D plus 1 by C plus D plus R by D, which is equals to M by H is equals to small c plus 1 divided by small c plus small r, where small c is the currency to deposit ratio and small r is the reserve to deposit ratio. Thus, M is equals to small c plus 1 by small c plus r into H. The small c plus 1 by small c plus small r is the money multiplier which determines the effect of monetary base on the money supply. The above analysis claims that money supply is endogenously determined via the demand for bank credit. Acceptance of post-Keynesian endogenous money theory implies that fluctuations in monetary aggregates can be driven endogenously. Banks supply the credit demanded at the interest rate they choose to offer on loans. This interest rate is determined by a markup over the central bank lending rate and cost of other sources of financing. In this sense, banks are price makers and quantity takers. In fact, deposits are just one way of obtaining these funds. Alternatively, banks can borrow from the central bank at the policy rate or borrow from money markets. This implies that money multiplier works not just on the basis of deposits. The central bank, as the lender of last resort, accommodates to the borrowing demands of banks, setting the cost of borrowing rather than its quantity. It means that the central bank cannot control the money supply, but can affect the cost of credit through interest rate policy. Thus, there is wide consensus that in real world money supply is neither endogenous nor exogenous, it is a convex combination of the two. It means that money is partly controlled by the monetary authority and partly by the money demand. In normal times, monetary authority tries to accommodate the expansion in money demand while it actively uses its tool of interest rate to stabilize a high inflation or overheated economy.
Now we will summarize what we have learned in this module. First, quantity theory of money takes money supply to be exogenously given and money supply is ineffective in affecting the real variables in the economy. Second, Keynesians postulated that monetary policy leads to changes in output through its effect on interest rate and thereby affecting investment. However, price rigidity makes it ineffective in establishing the price stability. Third, monetarists claim that monetary policy can stabilize the economy and influence the real variables in the short run. Fourth, money supply is total money in the form of currency and deposits in circulation. Fifth, exogenous money supply means it is determined and controlled by the monetary authorities. Sixth, endogenous money supply is demand driven and various factors like banking sector, firms, etc. determine the demand for money which in turn influence the money supply. Seventh, money market equilibrium is established where demand for money equates with the supply of money. Eighth, in real world, money supply is neither fully exogenous nor fully endogenous.